Hi, my name's Angela Casey and welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, the podcast that explores Edinburgh's green spaces and the people in them. So the Water of Leith Conservation Trust has a visitor centre on Slateford Road. It has 11 members of staff and is a voluntary and paid for organisation. And we're going for a walk and we're going to talk about people who work there, about life, about conservation and the joy of volunteering. We met up at the Water of Leith Visitor Centre and we're now walking down beside the Water of Leith. We're going down towards Colinton Tunnel. It's a lovely bit of the Water of Leith. It's very rural feeling. And I'm here today with Johnny Wells of the Water of Leith Conservation Trust, who is a ranger. Is that right, Johnny?
That's correct, yeah. I'm now the senior ranger within the trust workforce.
Well, welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors.
Thank you very much.
And there's quite a lot of people around, so we thought we'd come up into this nice, quiet bit. I've never been up here.
So this is an area where we use for our education sessions. So it's a nice open area surrounded by really old, ancient horse chestnut trees. So it's slightly bare on the ground because of all the kids that kind of run about and so forth. But it's just slightly off the walkway and slightly hidden.
The tree is just seat height.
It's as if we've designed it specially for for groups and podcasts.
I was reading that it was saying, of course, that once upon a time the river was natural, but for many years it was industrial. So it's a river that's seen an awful lot of attack almost, isn't it?
Definitely. I think if you consider, so because Leith was the historic port for the whole of Scotland, everything was coming in there. If you imagine that just between Leith and Balerno, at its peak, there were 77 mills over a 13-mile. People made a fortune from it. So James Gillespie is probably one of the famous ones. It was revolutionary in paper making because during the Great Enlightenment you needed books. So hence paper making in the Water Leith became this amazing industry up until, I'm going to say, 1970s when the Kenleith paper mill closed down. They used to print the paper for, I think it's the 10 shilling note. So I don't like to brag, but we were in the money many, many moons ago. But again, down at Leith, they had a whaling fleet. The Royal Navy was based there. It was this real hive. And again, Delagio, so a good name drop. The commercial street where all the storage buildings are. That's where they used to store their whiskey before it went out across the world. So because of the river, you had this natural power source that was going on. The oldest mills date back to the 12th century. There must have been mills pre to that, but nothing was really recorded. They would change hands quite a lot because some would get flooded out, some would explode, like the one down near the Modern Art Gallery where the Britannia Hotel is. That's where the last water mill went out of business when it went up in smoke back in, I think it was the 1980s. I'm having a moment of self-doubt. I know it was Lawrence Walker. He was a sixth generation miller and he was on the third story. And at the time they were milling sawdust, which if you grind it, it turns into wood flour, which then goes into kitchen lino, and it's extremely flammable. And obviously if your gritstones get too close, they'll spark. So he was on the top floor of 3, a huge explosion that we know exactly when it happened because there were 2 police officers sat on Belford Bridge at the time just watching the road go by. He was in a coma for 3 days, suffered 50% burns down one of his sides, but still lived until he was 80. And if ever you're walking near the Antigone Gormley statue at the Modern Art Gallery, if you have a look on the benches, you'll see the final bench is in dedication to him. So there's really amazing stories. Yeah. And what you see now is very much this beautiful wildlife corridor, but actually when the first paid member of staff started, she would always tell me stories of when they did litter picks, this council would literally deliver a skip because there was so much metal that would come out. So scaffolding poles, prams, cycles, old drums, there was so much heavy metal that came out, and it's in tribute to those early volunteers that I can now wade with a plastic bag.
Yeah, not a skip. yeah. That's pretty good.
And most times, don't get me wrong, if you ever come down, so we do, the first Wednesday of every month, we do a massive clean-up down in Leith. And we take a boat that sweeps the basin and it gets everything that gets washed down. If you have a dog walker, the first Thursday of every month, walk past the visitor centre, and normally there is a yellow trug full of dog bowls, tennis balls, and all the other balls that we pull out at Leith. One of these days, I'm going to get somebody to actually mark them up to see how many end up back in a circular economy. As the trust, we don't own the river. We don't own any of the banking. The walkway is owned by Edinburgh City Council, but invariably a lot of the river is owned by private landowners. So it then means there's lots of grey areas, but I think this is the beauty of the trust. We're not a campaigning group. We're very much about a practical response.
But you're also about, actually, I can see from your website, you're about helping people enjoy being part of it.
But it just gives this really amazing space. So we've got resident otters that returned to the river in 2009. We've got badgers, foxes, herons. We've got these really kind of big mammals, and that's because we've got this amazing ecosystem in the river, the really smallest ones, the invertebrates, that are then feeding the fish, and it continues. So I think, the fact that it runs through so much of the river, and I think obviously during COVID times, once everybody done Arthur's Seat, once everybody been to Edinburgh Castle, a lot of people who'd never been on the river found it because they were so desperate for a bit of escapism. And certainly we have river patrollers that go out and they'll count the amount of walkway users. We've just seen a steady increase over the years that we've been doing that.
Yeah.
Which is great on one side of it, because actually the more people that are using the walkway, the more people that have a love for it, actually it's easier to then get action if you need it. Mm-hmm. On the other side of it, obviously it's an urban river. We do get lots of litter. If you look at any of our Instagram posts, there's normally 10 bags of rubbish at every session we do.
And you do like a small section?
Yeah, so we'll do about half a mile kind of section each time, depending on what we're doing. Obviously, if we're raking leaves, a lot less. If it's this time of year where we're doing the spring clean, when the vegetation's down, we'll normally try and do a mile each time. And yeah, a lot of it, unfortunately, is the usual suspects. So it's plastic bottles, aluminium cans. So had the bottle deposit scheme happened, we won't be seeing any of those because they've then got a value. While they're seen as irrelevant, we find them along with the dog poo bags, along with crisp packets, you name it, we'll find it. Unfortunately, we kind of, for all the beauty of the river, for the volunteers, don't normally see the dark side of life. But again, it's that nice bit of, there's that sense of satisfaction. Yeah. At the end of every single volunteer session, they walk away with a big pile of rubbish normally. So we know the local area is clean until we need to do it again in a few months. Normally the walkway, there's always improvements, whether that be raking, clearing steps and so forth, to make it more usable. And hopefully, I always say this hopefully if people are not looking at their feet, trying to avoid puddles, if they're not getting distracted by bits of rubbish and so forth, hopefully they'll stop for a second and they'll look at the river and there'll be that really kind of nice connection. Because, I don't know, there's something about rivers and water, whether it be stood watching the tide come in or just the movement of the water, that, I don't know, there's something really natural that kind of calls to us from that. And then on top of that, while you're watching it, if you see a kingfisher dart past or if you see a dipper bobbing up and down, if that doesn't put a smile on your face, then I think we're kind of struggling at that point, to be honest.
So what is the work you do? Tell me what you do in a typical day.
A typical day, so normally, probably a week is probably better. So normally I'm out 2 to 3 times a week making a practical difference on either in the river or on the walkway. And that's either with our own volunteer team. So we've got 500 registered volunteers. Out of that, I would say there's probably 30 to 50 regulars that will come out at least once a fortnight. On top of that, there's a lot who work during the week, so they'll come out weekends and so forth. So out of that 500, I'd say there's probably 150 that are quite active, 250 that as and when, and that could be just once a year depending on their work schedules. And then everything's very seasonal. So through the winter, we're very much on land due to the force that's in the Water of Leith, and we'll be raking leaves, we'll be cutting back vegetation, we'll be building brush fences, we'll be putting up bird boxes and so forth. Then once the river level drops, normally about March, April, then we do a big sprinkling.
And that means you actually go in the water? Yep,
so fully with either thigh or chest waders, and we wade all the way down from Balerno to Leith, and we do a huge sprinkling of the river. So that's just short of 13 miles. And when we're doing that, it's everything that's been washed in, either from the sewer system, from the roads. So yeah, you're pulling off from all the brambles. It can be quite depressing because on one side of it, there's something amazing about being in the river wading. But when you've pulled your 300th wet wipe from a bramble, there's a little bit where you question your own sanity. But the nice bit is when you've got many hands, actually it's quite light work. And once that's out, then normally, unless we get big surges like we had last May, then once we've got all that waste out, normally nature kind of looks after itself from that point. Once we've done the spring clean, it's then all about invasive species. So on the river, we still have Japanese knotweed, giant hogweed, Himalayan balsam, a little bit of skunk cabbage, and I think it will be very hard to eradicate everything because we've got so many tributaries that come in, and until we can get up every single one and check for seed sources, we're kind of doing our best. So we've been treating from the visitor centre up to Balerno for the past 7 years, and we're now down to less than 150 giant hogweed plants. We took over spraying from the visitor centre down to Leith from the council during COVID times, and last year we had 4,500. So the difference, it just needs to be, we need to get out every single time we can, treat as many plants, and as the seed sources go down, because unfortunately invasive species are sensational and their seeds can last for about 7 years in the soil.
Yeah.
So it's this real battle that you have to do every single year. But we are seeing a reduction. There's definitely less Himalayan balsam on the river, giant hogweed's falling, and the next bit is the Japanese knotweed.
Which is almost impossible, isn't it?
But then the nice bit is, once we do finish those, we then have 7 wildflower meadows and 3 community gardens that make a bee and butterfly corridor up the river. Unbeknownst to me, when I first started, I'd never really looked after a wildflower meadow, and I just thought, well, you just leave it to it. And it turns out that actually you need to...
It's quite difficult.
Yeah, you need to cut it, you need to rake it. So we have a trained team of scythers, because I went down a rabbit hole and trained myself and then got some more training. So we've got a team of about 13 to 15 trained volunteers who you see in all the meadows scything them, so then we don't have to use electrical strimmers that much.
That's really dedicated.
I think it's that nice bit of, like I say, because the river runs through so many communities, you get so many people that want to kind of maintain it. So actually, it's more just my job is being almost like a circus master. Some would say herding squirrels, herding cats, take your pick. So really it's that bit of, I have 3 goals when I'm out on sessions, and it's the one common theme that I say to every single group when they come out. 1, it should be enjoyable, and obviously there's different types of fun. So there's that type 1 fun, when we stop for the tea break, we open the biscuit tin and you just get to hang out by the river. There's type 2 fun, which is very much, you've got to do a bit of graft, but at some point you'll be able to stand there with your hands on your hips, sucking air over your teeth and think, proper job done. But then there's that final bit, type 3 fun, which I associate very much with my mum, where she would say, go, you enjoy yourself. And if the person organising it isn't on the ball, then unfortunately a lot of times you might go, you don't know anybody, you feel out of place, you're not sure what the task is, you might get soaking wet if you didn't know to take a raincoat. So then by the time you go away, you're like, I'm never doing that again. So we always aim for type 1 and type 2 fun, and because of the quality of the sessions that we do, I think that helps and brings people back as much as possible.
So these are 2 of your colleagues coming up here. Who's
That's
this?
right. So we've got Kat, who's got the blue jacket on, the blue hair. So she is our visitor centre. And we've got Laura, who is the new education assistant. This is one of the other bits that we do. So during the school holidays, we do educational activities. So we run fun sessions where groups of about 10 to 12 kids come, and sometimes it can be in the river, doing river dipping, sometimes it's survival skills, sometimes it's bugs and beastie hunts, and it's that low-level work of helping them get passionate about their little space. So it then marries up with the, let's get in the river, let's do the practical stuff. Actually, if you're not making them passionate, at some point there's going to be that massive gap, isn't there, when we're asking for volunteers and everybody's like, well, what's the point, why should I guess
that they come in early enough. I think you were saying earlier it gives you almost like a lifelong relationship with the river for them.
So we have, at the moment, it's the fishing season, and the permits are downloadable.
Oh, you can fish in the Water of Leith, can you?
From April until the end of September, fishing is allowed in the river. There's certain bits which are private land, which you're not allowed to be on, but the majority of it you're allowed to be on. It's catch and release because it doesn't get stopped. And so then there's asking fishermen to be careful with their lines so they don't get hooks caught using the right kind of hooks and so forth. And again, it's like those responsible ones. They come back with great reports of what they've caught, what they've seen and so forth, so it's really useful. But then all it'd take is, if there was a regular person coming down taking the fish out, then it's really hard for it to recover the river at times, because we've got weirs, and certainly the weirs at Stockbridge, That's the issue with the river, is that it's sectioned off due to the weirs that are along it. At some point in the future, you know, it'd be amazing to get rid of all these weirs. It'd be great if the port gates were open and it'd be just a fully functioning river. So it's then how can we help in small little ways, and hopefully this big picture stuff will be done by Nature Scott and by us pushing the Water of Leith Action Group.
God, that would be good if it was open all the way down, wouldn't it?
Oh,
that would be great.
Yeah.
Actually, obviously you have all the volunteers who come and they do an amazing job, but you've got people who walk here every day with their dogs or just walking through it. So in a sense, they're part of the river's community, aren't they? So what can they do that will help you without having to turn up and do a volunteer session?
The majority of people nowadays have their mobile phone with them. So I think programming in, so we've got the Scottish Environment Protection Agencies, and, you know, we're a voluntary organisation. I'm not going to be chasing people down, arresting them or anything like that. But one of the main challenges with the river is pollution events. So the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, once they know about it, they can come out and they can coordinate work with Scottish Water and the likes. So their number, 0800 80 70 60. So the Water of Leith should be really nice and brown. It takes on that colour from the Pentland Hills. So if when people are walking down, if they see it changing colour dramatically, normally to a grey, so if you see grey kind of wastewater, that normally means that there's a good chance that wet wipes have blocked a sewer and it's discharging into the river instead.
I keep pulling faces that listeners can't see.
But
you keep telling me things and I'm thinking, ugh.
I would like to think that everybody listening to the podcast will have heard that wet wipes, even though they say flushable, don't flush them down your toilet. It'll block your toilet system. It'll make a mess of everything. It causes £1 million worth of damage for Scottish Water. It will block the sewers, which then come into here. They'll get filtered out down at the Seafield Waste Plant, and as taxpayers we have to pay for the skip's worth that they filter out and so forth. So stick it in the bin instead. But yeah, the main bit for the river is pollution. We have river patrollers who go up and down the river. We have volunteers, but if you see something that doesn't look right, so if there's really bad discoloration of the river, if you see a build-up of foam, you will get natural brown foam on the river, but if you were to see really white foam, if it smelt of kind of like fabric softener, something of that nature, again, there's a good chance that wastewater's coming in. By all means, let us know as well, but first of all, phone SEPA. They can get workers to come out to assess it, because like I say, nature can take care of itself fairly well, but we just need to be mindful because we have all these street drains, and every so often somebody will pour white spirits from when they've been doing painting jobs. They'll pour it down the drains. Like I say, unfortunately it is the overflow for the sewage system.
And I guess that happens a lot when we've had heavy rain.
And again, if there's any plastic next to the street drains, you know, that's all coming in.
Yeah.
And that's why we do a lot of litter picking, because it's twice as hard to get it when it's in the river.
Yeah.
And it will slowly break down. It will then get eaten by the fish, which then gets into the food chain of the otters, the herons and so forth. So it's that vicious cycle of once it's in, it's never going to be biodegradable. Even though the wet wipes say they're biodegradable, when they're hanging on the side of a bramble in the Water of Leith, I can guarantee you it's going to be 7-8 years. They're still going to be there breaking down. So
I'm pulling faces again. There's also dog poo bags, obviously, which we don't understand why anybody leaves them lying around, but people do. And it's not fair because then your volunteers are having to pick them up, so there are bins around, aren't there?
There are. The council have got rid of a few bins on the walkway, so it is, I mean, again, it's a responsibility. You know, if you've got a dog, it's your responsibility to pick it up, take it with you. Whatever you do, don't throw it in a bramble, because again, it's twice as hard to get it when it's a bramble. It goes back to that leave no trace, isn't it? And again, you know, if people are walking along the walkway, and especially those that walk it regularly, if you see the odd Lucozade bottle, and if you know there's going to be a bin within 100 metres, then pick it up, take it there. Research has shown the cleaner an area looks, the less likely people feel that they should drop litter, as it were. But yeah, just those little bits of letting us know if you see really nice wildlife sightings, if you see any sort of pollution, give SEPA a call, and yeah, enjoy it.
So how did you get into doing all this?
Oh, I'm a total mongrel. Left school, was working in pubs, then got into direct line insurance. So if your house burnt down, I was the guy on the end of the phone that would take you from tears to knowing what was going to happen. But then had an epiphany when I was 25, 26, and got really lucky, and went and did an internship with an organisation called Rites of Passage Journeys in Seattle in the USA. And it is honestly, as this white middle class kid from Leeds, who still to this day, my blueprint for life is my dad. My dad's 80, I've never seen him cry. Even when he's even when his greenhouse with his prize flowers burnt down, because he's very much a Yorkshireman. So his main feelings are okay, happy, tired and hungry. So based on that, I then get to Seattle, where it was very much about emotions, feelings. It was rites of passage trips, so kids would be taken to the Olympic Mountains for 30 days. They would hike for 2 weeks. They would go and do a vision quest where you sit by yourself for 2 days and 2 nights without food, and you sit with your feelings and you make sense of your world and so forth. And it was amazing.
I mean, that must, for you, having grown up with your dad like he was, that must have been, well, initially a culture shock, was it?
Yeah, total culture shock, total outside. Yeah, just that. I think it's the beauty of experiences, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. Did you reject it at first when you first got there? No, you did embrace it.
So there were all these amazing experiences, and don't get me wrong,
What's a sweat lodge?
So it's basically like an intense sauna. So imagine a sauna that's completely dark. So it would be like a bit of a dome that's completely sealed with a fire pit in the middle, and there'd be a fire outside, and they would bring in like hot stones. They'd put water on it, and as I describe this, I'm just like, this sounds amazing.
This sounds like things people pay hundreds of pounds for.
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
It's full on tree hugging, but it's such a powerful thing of, you would be in this sweat lodge with maybe like 10 people, and the elder would set a question, and everybody would go around. It's a way of having a really intentional discussion in the darkness that's very hot, and it's got to be experienced to really understand it. Getting back to Leeds, I moved up to their city project, and we're working with 6 young people who were vulnerable of being homeless, and again, really good experience. It took me on a journey. So I went to college, then 4 years at Edinburgh Uni, got a social work degree, and then once I got that, the first thing I did was run away to New Zealand for a year. 2 months with the Department of Conservation in the Tongariro National Park in New Zealand, which is mind-blowing amazing, and then worked at Wellington High School as the pupil support assistant for the rest of it. Came back to Edinburgh and then did 6 years with Bernardo's, and then I got a job with the National Trust of Scotland, leading their Thistle Camp programme, which were working holidays where you took groups of 12 people to the 4 corners of Scotland, and you worked with some of the most passionate, some of the most amazing rangers and gardeners there ever were, and had the whale of a time. And just when I got to the point where I was kind of bored of living out of a rucksack, the job opportunity came along with the Water of Leith Conservation Trust as a ranger. And although I didn't have as much technical knowledge, say for example of what flower this is or how this, or the river, what I did have, as you've heard on the podcast, is the gift of the gab. So I am the storyteller.
The gift of the gab is great.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's what you need, and I bet you're brilliant with the groups of volunteers who come, like you said, about making people feel like they're included.
So you can imagine the tea break. So people come for the conservation, but they stay for the conversation.
Bit of a tongue twister.
It is, but it's so right though. It's this community that you're then part of, and that shared goal of doing something to make the river better. There are talks for adults. We also do a guided wade.
A guided wade?
It was the natural progression from a guided walk. Like, guided walks are lovely, but people are desperate to get in the river, so we said, all right, okay, every August I'll stick them in waders. So we did our first one last year, which went really nicely. We went from the visitor centre all the way up to Bogsbridge. Thankfully nobody tripped, nobody fell in the water. And then, like I say, any corporate team that wants to come out, we have 3 ways they can do it. One, they can just get on with it. We can lend them litter pickers, we can lend them gloves, and we can direct them to where the hot spots will be, where they'll get maximum joy from litter picking. We have the join-in option, so up to 5 people can just come out and join in with one of our regular volunteering that normally happens Monday and Wednesday. And then the final bit is when people come out, and we'll do either a half day or full day that's totally tailored to them.
So you've got to do the questions at the end of every podcast. Okay. I asked these questions. But one of them is, what does the outdoors mean for you?
The outdoors is the place that really makes me smile. And I think this is very John Muir. The John Muir Award, I think, was a really well thought out kind of thing, because when people talk about the outdoors, it can be anywhere. It could be your back garden, It could be by the river. But there's something about it that if you stop just for a second, watch the clouds, smell what's going on, yeah, normally you get a massive smile on your face.
Here you get a great big strong whiff of garlic that makes you want your lunch.
I don't know. I thought I smelled a load of dog poo as well, just.
We also got a lot of weed earlier, which was quite nice.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of the outdoors, that whatever sort of day you're having, go for a walk, sit in a park, you know, like 5-10 minutes later, the world's normally a nicer place.
And has there ever been a time when being in the outdoors has really helped you?
I think this is where the really hippie, trippy version of me. So I am a dedicated tree hugger. I hide it with my macho rugby playing exterior, with my walking about with a spade, shovel, doing the practical stuff. But honestly, this is where, having had to hug a tree for 30 minutes as part of this practical exercise, and being deeply embarrassed, but then that bit of letting go. And I think having done vision questing, I think they've been really powerful moments for me. So for all the gruffness, the rugby playing that I do, there's this really softer side of me from the social work, the counselling skills that I've done, of those moments where it's about supporting and it's about having those bits where, instead of being the Yorkshireman and having those comedy moments where it's like, oh, you've just been in a car accident, you've lost both legs, how are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. Are you sure? Well, you mustn't grumble, I'm still alive. So it's those nice bits, isn't it, where you hold your hands up and you say, actually, I'm not okay. So the more chilled you can be, the more you breathe. Because, yeah, whenever I go and see friends, if I see a big tree, invariably I'll go and give it a hug. For a hug to really release things in you, you have to do a hug for like 20 seconds. It seems like a long time.
I thought you were going to say 20 minutes.
Oh no, God, no, that would be even worse.
20 seconds is manageable.
But there's something really nice about just that experience, isn't
Having
it?
a huggy tree. And the final question is, where's your favourite place in Edinburgh?
No, it's not the river. I know you think it's the river, it's not the river. Yeah, I'd say it's Loch End Park. There's a bit of the river that I love, but that's a special place, and if I share that, then people will start looking for it. So, but Loch End Park is a 10-minute walk away from where I live, and there's something sensational about it. There's the seats right up at the top that overlook it all, and you can see Arthur's Seat, and you can see a bit of the sea. I'll tell you what, just sensational. But it's so weird that it's such an urban. It's a bit like this, when we leave the Dells, it suddenly becomes really urban.
Well, we can hear the bottles being emptied in the background.
And it's that amazing bit, isn't it, of how nature, give it a space, does its thing.
Right, well, we'll come down and hug trees.
I think that's the beauty of conservation as well.
Yeah.
You fool people into coming out because they're going to do litter pick or they're going to rake leaves. And then invariably, there's that really nice bit, isn't there, of they discover somewhere.
Yeah. So, Johnny, that has been a really good chat. I've enjoyed that very much.
My pleasure.
That has been great, and I've loved seeing some tree hugging. Okay.
It'll change your life, honestly. That's if everybody did a bit of tree hugging every day, honestly, for 20 seconds every day to hug a tree, I don't think you can go wrong with life.
That's my commitment. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening to Edinburgh Outdoors. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please rate us on your podcast app and leave a review. And don't forget to tell your friends, family or colleagues about it too. If you know of an outdoors space or person in or around Edinburgh that might like to be featured, you can get in touch via email, Blue Sky, Instagram or Facebook.